Hey everyone, it's Lisa from the blog farmhouseonboone.com, and today I'm going to tell you about painting upholstery fabric on a couch or chair, which is something I never thought I would do, but after reading about it on several blogs, watching several YouTube videos, I finally decided to try my hand at it, and I'm excited to share with you what I learned, if it worked, if I even suggest you doing it. So when I snagged a 3-piece furniture set on Facebook Marketplace for $75 total, $25 for the couch, $25 for the love seat, and $25 for the chair, I had to get it. I made Luke go get it right away because this was a person who actually only lived about 7 miles from me, which is crazy. Normally when I find really good deals, it's like we need to go to the city today and get this thing. So once I contacted her, she said, I've already had so many inquiries, are you really coming right now? And so we did. Luke went and he had to take 2 trips in the back of our van to get all this furniture. My first thought was I'm going to reupholster this I was hoping to do some kind of velvet. Maybe a light gray or a light green was my thought process. And then after talking to a few friends, I was talked off the ledge of that one because I know I could do it, but it would be such a ridiculous process that I'd probably just rather pay any price for new furniture. So this is the DIY person in me who thinks, I can do this. And instead, I tried to start researching some other options and eventually came across the idea of chalk painting fabric. My mind went to probably what yours is going to right now. The first thing is that's not gonna work. It's gonna be crunchy. It's gonna feel like you're sitting on paint. So I researched into it a little bit further, dug a little deeper, and found out that there actually is a method that you can use that does not cause the fabric to be crunchy. Essentially what you're doing with this process is you are dyeing the fabric by watering the paint down so that it soaks into the fabric and doesn't actually sit on top of the fabric, but goes into it and makes it to where you are dyeing it. So I chose a color by Magnolia Home called Emmy's Room, I believe. Yes, Emmy's Room. It's a green color in this chalk style paint. I really liked the green shade, especially for the theme that I'm going to be doing in my living room, which will be coming soon. I have so many big plans for it, but getting this furniture done first is a priority. Now, I will say that the color ended up taking on a little bit of a different shade on top of this yellow fabric that originally the set came in, but I really do like it. Now, if you're going to be attempting a project like this, you want to get something that has good bones. So all of the fabric is very much intact and pretty. The only problem with the fabric was that it just wasn't my style. I didn't like the yellow shade. Also, the wood is in great condition. At some point, it would probably be nice to actually strip the wood because it's coming off, the stain is coming off in several areas. For now, I just want to get the project done in my living room and start living with it, see if I like it before I invest more time. So that's another thing. I thought, you know what? Why don't I try this fabric dyeing thing? If in a few years I decide I love this furniture, but I want something a little bit comfier, more cozy, then I could think about taking the plunge and reupholstering it in a velvet. But first, let's just see if we like it, if the style looks right in the living room before I invest time and money in all of this fabric. So let's dive into the process. Before I got started, I made sure to trim off any strings that were fuzzies or hanging down, and I also stapled anything that was loose back on. My chair actually had duct tape on it and I had to staple the trim back on, but it actually wasn't a very big deal at all. The piping trim needed to just be secured. You could also use upholstery nails or tacks. I just had staples, so that's what I did. The key with this is you have to get the fabric really, really wet. On the first chair that I did, I didn't quite grasp this. I mean, I got the fabric pretty wet, but whenever I did this next piece, the love seat, I even made sure it was even wetter so that it really absorbed in and didn't get crunchy. So on the chair, I took a spray bottle and I just wet it in little sections as I was working. So I would wet one little area, work the paint into it, wet another area, work the paint into it, and then I would even take my spray bottle and spray it to make the paint sitting on top even wetter and soak in more. Now this does mean that you need more coats of paint because you will think that it's painted, and then you'll come back 2 hours later and it's soaked in and you're seeing the yellow or whatever fabric you had before really prominent again. So on the chair, I ended up doing 3 coats. I'm about ready to do the 3rd coat here on this love seat. And then I think that it's the color I like. It actually looks really good. I've had the chair sitting in my living room now for a few weeks. It's been done and I actually really love it. It is not crunchy. Now, one thing I did have to troubleshoot, I found that if I got too far ahead of myself on wetting it, it would be too dry by the time I got to it. So I used this spray bottle, and then I also sometimes just dipped my paintbrush into a container of water and rubbed it on that way, and that really helped to make it wetter more quickly. Now, areas where it was vertical versus like a seat, but like the back and the front, sometimes, especially on the back where there's no padding and it's just fabric stretched out over wood, it would run off and not absorb in as quickly whenever I used the dipping method. And so I relied on my spray bottle because it helped it to actually absorb in. So you'll just find what works. The key of this, and I've seen so many different tutorials and different methods. Some people actually water down the paint beforehand, but the key is to keep the paint wet. Whatever you do, you will notice that if you come back the next day and there was a certain spot that you didn't wet it down enough, it'll be crunchy and hard like paint, but the other areas will feel like fabric. I went to a store recently that actually had done this, so I got to feel the couch in real life, and I actually messaged her and asked her what method that she used, and she said she did the spray bottle method where she sprayed a little bit, painted a little area, sprayed more, so she didn't dilute the paint. She just went ahead with her spray bottle and then worked the paint in slowly. I needed 3 coats of paint for my projects. Depending on your color of the upholstery before and the color you're going with will determine how many coats you need to do. If you have a dark fabric and you're going over it with the light, of course that's gonna take a lot of coats. I watched a lady on here, I believe her name is Debbie, and she did black paint over a light color, and I think she only did 1 coat. Some people also do finish it with a top coat, like a wax or something, and say that it feels like leather. I haven't personally tried that. I am going to leave it as is, and then if it gets stained up too easily with the kids, I will go over it with 1 more coat of paint and then add a top coat. But for now, this is what I'm gonna do. Now, another tip is on the first chair that I didn't use any painter's tape. I just used a small paintbrush, like a kid's art paintbrush, and got around the edges for the piping. On the second time around on the love seat, I actually did tape off all of the wood, and it made it significantly easier, a lot quicker, of course. And so I would recommend doing that, even though it took a long time to tape it off. It was totally worth it. And I feel like the trim around the outside actually looks a lot better. Since I taped it off, I was able to get the paint in a little bit better. Another thing I learned on my second piece is to separate out around the tufting and get my paintbrush in there really good. On the first one, I kind of just went over, and then I found that when you sit on the chair, a little bit of the yellow will peek out. So you'll notice here where I pull out around the buttons and work my paintbrush in on that first coat. Now, I didn't worry about that as much on the second and third coat because I figure it's not gonna be seen much. If it does peek out, at least it's bluish. Now, if that bothers me later, I do have some leftover paint and I can, of course, put another coat on. As soon as you go to put another coat on after something has dried a while, because I actually did this with my small chair, weeks after I did the first round and had it sitting in our living room a while, I noticed there was a few spots that were a little bit too yellow for me. As soon as you hit it with water, it softens up and you can put in another coat of paint, no problem. Another tip I learned is I really prefer to work on this outside and let it dry in the hot sun. This particular chair I left in our dining room the entire time I worked on it, this love seat, and it took almost 48 hours in between coats of paint for it to dry fully for me to do another coat because I got it so wet. Whereas the chair, I left it out while I was working on it, and then I would just put it on the porch at night to avoid getting dew on it. It would dry really within hours of being out in the hot sun. Don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, it worked. It is just as flexible as this. So if you're doing this project in the summer, I would recommend doing it outside. It'll just take you less time because if you need a lot of coats of paint, it's gonna be a weeks-long project where you're gonna have your dining room taken up buy a love seat if it's gonna dry that slowly. As far as the amount of paint, my love seat and chair took 2.5 cans of this 31-ounce paint. So it does take a lot of paint because you are letting it soak in. A lot of the paint is now inside the fabric. So if you want this to be a really budget-friendly project, which if you're painting furniture, you probably do, I would recommend maybe doing a latex paint and making it into a chalk paint, or if you can find inexpensive chalk paint somehow, there is tutorials on how to actually make your own chalk paint. I did not go super budget-friendly on this. I actually did go with the Magnolia Home line. So the chairs were cheap, but the paint was probably about $100, which is expensive, but I figured that if I spent all this time doing this, I wanted to make sure that it was the color I really like, and I don't regret that because I think that these are gonna look perfect with the living room style that we are going for. I've also heard from other people who've done this project that their chairs have lasted years. I've seen people do all different kinds of furniture with upholstery on them, and they have 2-year later reviews and say that it works really great. So we'll see. I will update you later. I have also heard that it gets a little bit softer over time as you sit on it, and so if it is a little bit crunchy, it won't be after a while. Something I've seen that's a cool idea, people buying these vintage couches and then doing this technique and using them as a photography prop. So painting them some really bright color and using them just as photography and not for their living room furniture. So that's an idea as well if you keep your eyes peeled. I've been looking for these now for a while, and you actually can find couches and chairs like this in abundance on Facebook Marketplace. Normally they're not nearly this cheap, but they're still way less expensive than brand new furniture. Now I decided to not put all 3 pieces in my living room, so I don't yet have the couch done, and I'm not sure if I'll do it the same color or where I'm gonna put it. I might actually just leave it in our little cottage as we make it over, but I thought that it would look a little bit too matchy-matchy in our living room to have all 3 pieces the exact same, and so I actually ordered a different couch for this space, and I'll be doing the Victorian couch later. Right, well, be sure to follow along. We're going to be doing a full living room makeover. This is just one piece. I have so many DIYs planned, and I'm excited to share all of that with you. If you are brand new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I make 2 videos every week on food from scratch, natural living, and a handmade home. Thank you so much for stopping by the farmhouse.